Hello and welcome back everybody to Cooking with Ken. Chef Mark here, working with some Mediterranean inspiration today. I'm going to be making flatbread. So in my bowl here I've got my flour. There's a 1 1/2 cups of flour, a half teaspoon of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of salt. That's going to be part of our base. We have here 2 teaspoons of sugar and 1 1/2 teaspoons of yeast. I'm going to add 2/3 cups of warm water to my yeast. Now, a misconception about flatbread is that they're always unleavened. The yeast in this instance is going to add a little more fluffiness to the texture of our flatbread, so it'll still be flat, as the name implies, when we cook it, but not necessarily unleavened. Now, that's going to need about 5 minutes to begin activating on its own. We'll see a nice foamy head coming to the surface of the water. It'll kind of smell like beer in the room, and we'll know it's ready to go into our flour mixture. Until then, we've got some chickpeas here that need to get roasted. They are going to go on top of our flatbread later. With these chickpeas, I'm going to be seasoning them with this mix of herbs in this bowl here. I've got a teaspoon of dried basil, a teaspoon of dried oregano, a teaspoon of garlic powder, and half a teaspoon of coriander. It's going to go right over my chickpeas. A few cracks of pepper. A nice drizzle of olive oil. Always, always salt. Just going to toss this together very well. And this pan is going to go into the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And with these chickpeas, the longer you leave them in the oven, the crispier they are going to get. I'm going to be shooting for about half an hour to 45 minutes on the cook time for these. So I want some decently crispy, nice textural contrast on my chickpeas when they go on the flatbread. Make sure these guys get very evenly seasoned. And into the oven we go with these. And set a timer. I'm going to set my first timer for 15 minutes. That way, halfway through the baking process, I can rotate these in case there's a hot spot in the oven. No certain spot of chickpeas gets more burnt or done than the others. There we go. All right, my sugar, yeast, and water mixture is doing all the things I needed to do at this point. It's going right into my bowl. Alongside that, I'm going to add a 1/3 cup of Greek yogurt. This is going to add some very nice tang from the acidity of the yogurt, as well as some moisture to the dough. And also 2 tablespoons of olive oil for just a little extra added tenderness and flavor. Let's get that mixed. And as with any dough, if you find this a little too wet, as I'm finding right now, we can always add more flour. So I'm going to acquire some more of that, mix it in just until I've got a dough that's not so sticky to the touch. I'm just adding my flour in a little bit at a time. You can always add a little more if necessary, but you can't take any flour away once it's mixed in. Still quite sticky. Start working this by hand at this point. And the dough feels the correct consistency. It's not super wet and sticking to me. It is slightly sticky, but not nearly as bad as it was earlier. Now, I'm going to start kneading it on my surface. Get a generous amount of flour down. Now, I'm not going to be kneading this as long as I would a typical bread dough. I'm not trying to get a super glutinous dough from this, just a smooth and tighter feeling dough. One that's going to be structurally sound. Just a little more. All right, my dough's just about where I want it to be now. I mentioned springy earlier. When I press in on the dough, it starts springing back. It's not going to spring back all the way because, again, I'm not trying to get like a traditional bread dough, just to start seeing some initial flex back. Now that that's done, I'm going to pop you into a bowl and get this covered with plastic wrap, and that'll set aside and rest for about 15 minutes. This resting period's going to make the dough a little softer and more tender in the finished product, and also make it a little easier to roll out. There will be less resistance and elasticity trying to pull the dough back together. So we're going to get this here cleaned up, get this wrapped and set aside, and next we're going to make our yogurt. All right, my timer just went off for the chickpea, so before we get to the yogurt sauce, let's get these guys rotated. Ooh, nice wave of heat in the face. But you can see already how they're starting to look dried on the outside, starting to crisp and develop a very glossy coat. Tastes really good, very herbaceous right now. Let's just rotate those, pop them back in for another 15 minutes. And they should be good. For our flatbread, I'm going to be making a tahini yogurt sauce. To start, I'm going to get 2 cloves of garlic minced. And I want this minced pretty finely, not trying to bite into super large chunks of garlic in my flatbread, especially not raw. There. That's about good for us. A very nice fine mince. To that, I'm going to add half a teaspoon of cumin and half a teaspoon of coriander. 2 tablespoons of tahini, which is sesame seed paste, for those of you not savvy. It's going to have a very earthy, very nutty flavor, really potent, but I love it. And I'm going to cut this lemon into wedges. Just 4. Add the juice from 1. Oop, not 2. And deftly fish out my seeds. That is ready to just get mixed up really well. And there we go. Now we'll add a pinch of salt. Salt everything. If you're not seasoning your food, you should be. Excellent. And that's good to go into the fridge until we are ready for it. Now, while I continue to wait on my flatbread to rest, I have some veg to get ready for it. I've got a bunch of scallions that I just rinsed off. I'm going to cut into rings very simply and set to the side. And I'm going to do half this red onion cut into strips or julienne. Let's get right to it. And I'm only using the really green, super verdant parts of my scallions, not so much the paler green or white ends. And this is more personal choice for color contrast. You can use it if you want to. I'm just choosing to omit. And discard your scallions or save them for use later in something else. And again, I've only need have need for half of this. I've gotten the veg that I needed prepped so far done. Gonna get those set aside, and we're going to make our second floury mess and get my flatbread rolled out. And just like that, our chickpeas have gone off. They're ready to come out of the oven. Ooh. And they smell glorious. And you can hear how hard they are, just rattling on the pan. Look like roasted Christmas nuts almost. Super good. Just appropriate amount of crunch. Generous flouring of a surface. As per usual, whenever we're rolling dough. My dough, I'm going to go ahead and roughly break into quarters. And if you want to be more accurate about this, you can use a scale and divide by weight. I'm just going to get these to roughly the same size or mass. You can see after that resting period, they're a lot stickier, much more soft, and that means more malleable, so rolling them is going to be much easier. Let's get a little extra flour down for these guys. Rub the dough from my hands. Sprinkle flour on top. And rolling from the center out, like I always do. And rotate between each two rolls. And I'm just trying to get a roughly 6 to 7 inch round of dough out of this. Just like that. Just try to roll it out as evenly as you can. Remember to use your hands. Cooking is a very textile thing. The texture of your dough will speak to you. On to the next one. Not worried about getting these perfectly round. Organic shapes look much more interesting anyways. A little flour on these to keep them from sticking to each other. All right, I've got my pan on medium-high heat right now. My flatbread I'm going to brush with olive oil and lay down the pan, olive oil side down first. Go ahead and get others brushed while I'm waiting on that. Pop that bubble, beware of steam. And these don't take very long to cook. It's only going to cook about 1.5 to 2 minutes on each side. Just until they've gotten golden brown and crisp on their exteriors. Just like so. I'm going to hit it with a little za'atar. Actually, I'm going to brush it with a little more olive oil first. Then hit it with my za'atar. Make sure it sticks. And for those that are not savvy, za'atar is a blend of either herbs and spices or an herb on its own, colloquially known as hyssop. And this, there we go. What I'm using is the spice blend. So that's a blend of herbs such as oregano, thyme. There's sumac in there, some toasted sesame seeds. So you're talking about something that's very, very earthy in flavor, but also a very nice bit of tang with the sumac. There we go. And while I have these going, I'm going to go ahead and get this back eye turned on high heat. And I'm going to get some red peppers roasted. I'm just going to lay that right over the open flame and let that start charring. I want the entire exterior of this pepper blackened. Now, for those of you watching at home, you do not have to flip barehanded like I do. That probably looks wild and crazy to some of you. You can use tongs or a large spatula. I'm just doing what seems natural and easiest to me. I don't have to dirty an extra dish. Can turn that one off. It's about another 2 minutes on this guy. I want them as blackened as possible, completely char the outside. And that's it for my peppers. Got these in a bowl together that I'm gonna cover in plastic wrap. This is going to help to steam them and make them easier to peel later. While we did want to blacken that entire exterior, we do not want to necessarily eat all of that char. So just wrap these, set them aside, and come back to them in a few minutes. All right, our peppers have been steaming away, and they are ready to come out. You can see now I rub my finger against them, and that char peels right away. That's exactly what I'm going to do to both of these. Again, you're not going to be able to get rid of absolutely 100% of it. I'm just looking to get rid of the majority. And all I've really done is burn that exterior skin away from the pepper, leaving all that interior flesh intact. The very nice roasty flavor and none of the extra chew from the skin. And these I'm just going to just slice. Remove the core first. Just simple strips of red pepper. All right. And with that, we're ready to start assembling the flatbreads. I don't know, when I watch shows like Chef's Table or other cooking documentaries like that, I'm most enchanted by just the silent concentration of the chefs on whatever they're plating.
I'll play music.
Just a drizzle of olive oil to finish. And some salt. Now that looks delicious. Ooh. Here we go. Just kind of taco it. Really, really delicious, super earthy with all the flavors that we have married together, from the roasted red peppers to the za'atar to all those other spices, my oregano, my basil, all those really deep earthy flavors sing together very well with that really bright acidity of the yogurt and the little astringentness of the onion. Marries it all perfectly. Thank you again, everybody, for joining me today. This is Chef Mark with Cooking with Ken. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. Remember to go down in the comments, leave some suggestions for future videos for us. We'll be looking for them. And we will see you next time.